tuning in. We are happy to do this town hall. This town hall is going to be about fraud prevention, and we've been doing this as a series of town halls just to make sure that given the pandemic and its impact to the economy, impact to the city and the community, that we prepare residents with the information that they need, and just prepare people in general, whether you live in Denver or are tuning in from other counties. It's important to know that a lot of the things that we speak of are specific to Denver, but they're very similar in some of the other counties, especially if you're in Colorado. A lot of the processes around foreclosure and stuff are the same. But if you have any questions, don't hesitate to give us a call at the clerk and recorder's office, or contact us, and we will get you into the right spot. And know that today I am joined by a great panel. This is a town hall on fraud prevention, and so the whole goal of this town hall is to share information with Denver residents on how to prevent fraud related to homeownership, and what steps exactly to take if fraud does occur. Now, I'm the Denver Clerk and Recorder, Paul Lopez. Our office is partnering with a number of organizations to make sure that you have the information that you need to make the best decisions you need, or to prepare for any decisions that you need to make, right? Know that our office, we cannot provide legal advice, but nonetheless, we are very familiar with the process in Colorado. These processes, many of them have public oversight. And so that's what we do, and that's what we've kind of been brought to this dance for. So I would like to introduce a few of our panelists, and I will do this as we kind of go through the agenda. So I do want to welcome Mr. Carmine from Colorado Legal Services. I do want to welcome Mr. Ron Ojeda, who is with OFEP, and that's the Office on Financial Empowerment and Protection. And also Hannah Harris, Ms. Hannah Harris, who speaks about who's going to speak to us on steps and solutions for addressing fraud when it does occur. And Ms. Hannah Harris, you are coming from the Office of the Assistant Attorney General. Well, actually, the Colorado Office of the Attorney General. You are an Assistant Attorney General, right? That's
True,
right.
yeah.
So, with that, I know that there are questions that we're going to have. We're going to take those questions as we go. So feel free to type those questions in the chat, and then we will actually get those answered. Know that you can share this on Facebook too, as we are live and we're recorded. We want to make sure that if you don't have your questions answered right now, we can continue to answer your questions, one, throughout this presentation live, but also as we go through the rest of the week. You can contact us and make sure that you get the information that you need. This will be on our Facebook, and you can repost it and play it at any time. So with that, I wanted to introduce Mr. Ron Ojeda. Ron Ojeda is with the Office of Financial Empowerment, otherwise known as OFEP. Juan is Juan. I just renamed you, Ron. Juan. I called you Juan Ojeda. Ron Ojeda manages the Consumer Financial Protection Unit for OFEP for the City and County of Denver. It provides a lot of wraparound services in conjunction with the office. He actually started in this unit in 2017. And brings 25 years of experience of financial services to this work. So we are going to go to a PowerPoint presentation, so make sure you follow along, and if you ask questions, if you need questions answered, just make sure you type them in the chat and we will get to you. Mr. Ojeda, other than a new name, you have the floor.
Happens to me all the time.
For the screen.
Well, you can change the slide, please. I just want a little framework to the issue that we're talking about this evening. In 2018, 11,300 victims reported real estate or rental fraud, resulting in losses of more than $149 million. This is as of the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center. Now, the fact is that this is the tip of the iceberg. This problem is much, much larger than 11,300 victims. As is with the case of many types of financial fraud, most incidents never get reported. And there's a number of reasons why that happens. Sometimes, literally, people are embarrassed and ashamed that they were actually victims. Sometimes it could be something more sinister in that it could be people who, for example, who are in communities that are undocumented. These folks, I mean, they have started businesses, they have employees, they own property. But the fact is that they really don't want to interface with law enforcement because of one fear or the other. So because of that, this number, although a decent sized number from the FBI, the problem is much, much larger in the United States. Next slide. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give several examples of wire fraud and how you can protect yourselves against this. So let's start with escrow wire fraud. And what does it look like? Okay, you get an email, phone call, or text from someone purporting to be from the title or escrow company that's handling your transaction, your purchase of your home or property, with instructions on where to wire your escrow funds. I just went through this myself. I just closed on a new home today. Yesterday, I received wire instructions on my email from the company that was going to handle my closing, the title company. So what I did was I independently went to Google and I looked up the name of the company and I looked up the office that they were assigning me to, and I called that company. And I said, I'm going to be doing a closing at your office tomorrow. And can you tell me who was assigned to my case or to my closing? He gave me the name coincided with the email. I said, fine, can you connect me with her, please? And I spoke with her in person, or rather over the phone, and she gave me the wiring instructions. I then went to my bank, had a banker actually take care of the wiring transaction. And this morning, when their office opened up, I called the title company and said, did you receive the funds? And they confirmed that they were received. That is a secure way to get your dollars. So how do you protect yourself? Call the phone numbers listed in your documents to verify wiring instructions. Never click on an email or text links or send money without verifying wire instructions with a live person on the phone from the number that you have personally verified. Next slide. Loan flipping. Right, so what is this? Well, what does it look like? A predatory lender persuades a homeowner to refinance their mortgage repeatedly, often charging high fees and points with each transaction. Older homeowners tend to be the targets of these types of fraudulent activity. So not, solely, of course. There have been a number of studies done that older people, for some reason, even people who have been CEOs of large companies, for some reason, they are subject to these influences of these people who call them and talk to them in these transactions. The problem is in a situation like this, they could wind up having refinanced their home 3 times in 18 months because somebody convinced them that, oh, it's a half point, you're going to save a lot of money. And instead, they paid out tens of thousands of dollars in high fees of points and have actually gone up behind the 8 ball. And they may even wind up with a mortgage payment that's higher. And because if they're on fixed income, they cannot pay the higher mortgage, they could wind up in trouble and be foreclosed upon in the worst scenario. How to protect yourself. Never sign anything until a trusted advisor or an attorney reviews it. Elderly homeowners with cognitive issues should involve a trusted relative or friend in any key financial discussion. Next slide, please. Example 3 is foreclosure relief. There's a lot of this going on right now. A lot of people are under the stress of not being able to pay rent or be able to pay their mortgage because of what happened with COVID-19. Thousands of families in the Denver area alone are facing these issues, and it's going to get worse. There's nothing we can do about it because the fact is that these people, they owe the money for the mortgage payments that they couldn't pay. And at some point in time, something needs to be done. We don't know what it is yet, but there's scammers out there that are offering their services to try to save these homeowners the problem of being in foreclosure and charging thousands of dollars for the privilege. How do you protect yourself? Well, it's the first time I'm mentioning my phone number in our office, but the Office of Financial Empowerment and Protection and our Consumer Financial Protection Unit, uh, we are a referring hub. We will refer you to free HUD certified housing counseling, financial coaches, free legal services, and other financial assistance to help you get out of this situation. Our office helped 5 families get out of foreclosure to HOAs by giving them a combination of financial assistance, coaching, and free legal services that were being paid by grant funds. You can also reach out to your lender. We strongly suggest this. If you think you are going to be in trouble on your mortgage payment, the first thing you should do is reach out to your lender and let them know what is happening. Example 4. Next slide, sorry. Predatory developers. And this is something very interesting that has happened and has really accelerated over the past 2 to 3 years because of the value of housing moving up in double-digit growth every single year. It's been absolutely good. I think it's on every news channel. Every time, every other day, you're going to find a report on what is going on in the housing market of Denver. It's caused a lot of issues for people and has caused a lot of situations where predatory actors can try to make money. So let's say that you get a letter on your door with official looking City of Denver letterhead. This actually happened. It talks about your home, them taking your home, the city taking your home using eminent domain. And what a coincidence, it's followed up by a knock on the door with someone who says, hey, we can pay you what your house is really worth, as opposed to letting the city come in and take it and not getting what your house is worth and you don't have any choice. This is not going to happen. The City of Denver does not do business like this. If you get a notice like this on your door, you want to call our office again, and we'll get to that number in a moment. But the fact is, what they're really looking to do is they're looking to scare people into making a decision. And they do a lot of this in neighborhoods of color, neighborhoods where you have people that may have other barriers toward communication as well. Another very interesting one that is coming up now is your HOA has foreclosed on your home due to late HOA fees. The HOA board member then shows up at the auctioning of your home. This has happened. Now, we're not saying that all HOAs are predatory and act in this way, but this has happened in the city and county of Denver. The problem is that HOAs have a very limited amount of oversight, either at the state or at the city level. Again, my office has helped multiple families by keeping their homes, by helping them through the process of dealing with the HOAs. Colorado Legal Services, and there's a representative from that organization, are here, and we have worked with them to prevent people from losing their homes. And this is another situation where if you think if you run behind in your HOA fees, you have to reach out to your HOA before they reach out to you. We have give you one case that had $1,000 in HOA fees. They wound up owing $8,000 to the HOA in legal fees, interest, and other penalties. So how do you protect yourself? Again, you can call our office. If you call our office, we will send you to the right agencies to bring resolution to your issue and help you with any other issues that this has caused in your life that have destabilized your housing. For example, I can't pay utilities. I've just been keeping up with my mortgage. I couldn't pay my HOAs. By the way, I can't put food on the table. We will refer you to the right agencies and make sure you get resolution and stabilize your home. Let's see, I think that's it for me. Of course, I'll be around for questions, but this is how you can contact our offices. I've already said several times. We do not ask questions about citizenship. We do not ask you questions such as what is your social security number. We are there to help and to make sure you get to the correct agency or organization that will bring you out of the issue that you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ojeda. It was a great presentation, and let's make sure that we keep the slide up just for a few more seconds. This is the phone number, and if you have any issues regarding, any questions about a piece of mail that you got, or a phone call, or even a text message from people who are seeming like they are wanting to help you Yeah, don't be afraid to call us. Do you give us a phone call? Give OFAP here a phone call and see if you verify if it's something that comes from the city and county of Denver. It looks pretty official. However, sometimes some of these pieces of mail and notifications, they try to really copy and mimic what we do. So if you have any questions about anything, you make sure you give us a call and we'll verify it. The next person I want to introduce is the Assistant Attorney General in the Colorado Office of the Attorney General, Ms. Hannah Harris. Just a little bit of background. She's worked in the Consumer Protection Division for 6 years, investigating and prosecuting fraud in many different industries. Most recently, she joined the Consumer Credit Enforcement Unit, where she specializes in fraud in the mortgage and student lending industries. So other than being eligible for sainthood because of that work, Ms. Harris, welcome, and the screen is yours.
That is all too kind. I'm really excited to join you all. I'm glad to share this digital stage with you. I'm really eager to speak to consumers both in Denver and hopefully across Colorado. My intention here, and I think everyone's intention, is just to help you educate yourselves so that you feel a little bit more confident as you go through the world, and hopefully can spot the folks who are trying to pull the wool over your eyes, because of course the best thing that we can do is to prevent fraud from occurring, right? Before you have to call in the firefighters, as they would here, Ron in the Office of Financial Empowerment, we hope that we can prevent fraud from happening. So what I do here at the Colorado Attorney General's Office is I enforce the Colorado Consumer Protection Act, or the CCPA. And the purpose of the CCPA is to prevent businesses or individuals from engaging in deceptive trade practices and taking advantage of consumers like yourselves, either vulnerable or sometimes incredibly sophisticated. And what does that mean, deceptive trade practices? One of the easy ways to think about this is scam artists, right? It's the scam artists, the fly-by-night organizations, and sometimes it's the big businesses who are trying to take advantage of folks. So just a little bit of background, that's what we do in my section of the office. We have a large team of people who, as Clerk Lopez mentioned, work in a number of different industries. But right now I want to talk to you a little bit about the kinds of fraud that you might see if you are encountering foreclosure or you're having trouble with your mortgage loan. So if you could go to the next slide. Great. So this is a little bit more about my office. We are a team of folks who we investigate and prosecute violations of that Colorado Consumer Protection Act. So anyone who we think has perhaps engaged in deceptive trade practices, who's engaging in fraudulent business or trying to, again, harm consumers. That is a pretty broad definition, honestly. And as you saw on the last slide, one of the purposes of the CCPA is to be interpreted broadly. Our purpose in my office is to protect consumers. And so the primary way that we hear about these businesses, that we get information, that we can start investigations, is from you guys. So I suppose my initial purpose here is to provide you with information so you can protect yourselves. But my secondary purpose is to ask you to provide us with information so that we can help protect all consumers here in the state of Colorado. The way that an investigation usually starts is that a consumer either encounters a practice which they think is suspect, something that seems off or fishy, or unfortunately they are the victim of fraud, and that fishy incident has already created harm in their life, either financial harm or emotional trauma. So we get a complaint in from a consumer, we're able to investigate that business or that individual, and then we do bring civil law enforcement prosecutions. So what does that look like? Most of us are familiar with the criminal law. Civil law is when someone has broken a law, and it doesn't result in someone going to jail in the way that we might anticipate. So some of the things that we are able to do when we're enforcing the Colorado Consumer Protection Act is we're able to apply civil penalties. So for every time a business or an individual violates the law, we can apply a penalty. And then when someone violates the law a number of times, we get a penalty for each case. So For instance, I'm going to talk to you in a little bit about fraudulent or misleading mailers that you might receive, like just those little postcard sized things that you get in your mailbox every day. Each one of those might be a violation. And so one of the ways in which we are able to deter people from taking advantage of consumers is we attach a penalty, a pretty significant financial penalty to each and every mailing that they send out if they're attempting to harm consumers. The other really big thing that we do in my office is we seek injunctive relief. And injunctive relief is sort of a complex term for a simple thing, which is we get a court to instruct the business or the person that they can't engage in a particular activity anymore. So sometimes this is as simple as saying, you can't break the law. The business practice that you've been engaging in violates the Consumer Protection Act. It harms consumers, and you can't do that any longer. When it comes to folks who have done something really egregious, who've done something really terrible, sometimes it goes as far as to say that they can't engage in that business practice anymore. You know, if you have defrauded people over and over and over again while running a charity, for instance, perhaps that particular individual can no longer be trusted to run a charity. And so that's what we would seek from a court, is in order not only imposing a penalty upon that person and causing some sort of punitive harm, but also preventing them from harming people in the future. And that's really a lot of what we do in my office, is forward looking. When we ask consumers to come forward and give us their complaints, we're not always able to help that particular consumer, but we are able to investigate that practice and prevent it from happening to future consumers. So one of the things that I want to sort of impress upon you guys is the first thing that you're going to want to do when you spot fraud is A, avoid it if you spotted it. B, call in the firefighters. So Ron, who you just heard from, his Office of Financial Empowerment, and Colorado Legal Services, Craig Carmine, that you're going to hear from in a minute, those are the folks who you want to be your first responders, right? Those are the folks who are going to help you. They're going to give you immediate advice about your particular problem. And then I want you to call us. And part of that is doing that civic duty of enabling us to investigate and prosecute that fraudulent action so that we can protect consumers in the future. You go to the next slide. One part of the Colorado Consumer Protection Act, the one that I'm sort of going to focus on a little bit today, is the Colorado Foreclosure Protection Act. It's one part of the CCPA. If we move forward. Okay, so one part of the Colorado Foreclosure Protection Act talks about foreclosure consultants. So I talked to you a moment ago about when you happen to be in financial distress, or you are facing imminent foreclosure, or you perhaps are taking advantage right now of the forbearance period where you're not needing to pay your mortgage. You will probably receive in the mail a lot of solicitations from folks who are looking to help you, right? You're going to get a lot of those little postcards. You might get a lot of emails, but you're going to be solicited by folks who are reaching out. They're going to offer a lot of things, right? They're going to offer, in this case, to help you stop or postpone a foreclosure, to help you get that forbearance. Right now, everyone has a forbearance, but in the future, they might offer to help work with your mortgage servicer to get you further forbearances, or to help this from impacting your credit. These are folks who we call foreclosure consultants. And one of the things that I want to impart upon you right now is that they might not call themselves foreclosure consultants, but if someone is offering to provide you any of the services on these lists, then they're going to be subject to the rules and regulations that I'm going to talk about in the next slide. So as you're getting all this information in the mail, as you might be feeling a little bit overwhelmed, I want to talk you through the kinds of things you want to be thinking about before you engage with somebody. We'll go on to the next slide. So if you decide that you want to work with a foreclosure consultant, the first thing that I want you to do as you're contacting these people and as you're thinking about contracting with someone is you want to make sure that the person you're engaging with is following the law. Why? Firstly, because the Consumer Protection Act exists to protect you. And secondly, because these are markers that this person might be looking to take advantage of you in other ways, right? So one thing, if you're looking to contract, you should always take the opportunity to take that contract home and review it, right? By the law, you as a homeowner have 24 hours to review any contract. So I'm going to ask you, before you sign anything at all, I want you to take it home. I want you to read it. If possible, I want you to read it with a trusted friend or a relative. And if you see any of the red flags that I'm going to note here in a moment, I want you to think about contacting either Ron or someone from Colorado Legal Services and asking them to help have an attorney help you review it as well. So these are the kinds of things that should be available to you. If you go on to the next slide, we'll talk about the red flags. Here we go. Okay, so here are some of our red flags. If you are thinking about working with a foreclosure consultant and they engage in any of these activities, this is an immediate red flag for you, right? One of the biggest things that we see are foreclosure consultants who look for payment upfront. This is something that you should always be wary of, and we'll talk about this in the next couple of slides as well. If anyone at this point in time asks you for payment upfront, you should be suspicious. You should absolutely take those 24 hours to review the contract and to ask someone to review that contract with you. For foreclosure consultants, they're absolutely prohibited from collecting compensation, not only upfront, but until they've completed the entirety of the services they promised to you. So this is one easy way to protect yourself, is just to think, if someone is asking you to open your wallet before they've done any work, you should think twice about working with that person. Another thing that we see here at the Colorado Consumer Protection section, something we see consumers come to us with, is foreclosure consultants who ask consumers to sign a quitclaim deed. So this is a deed which signs your home over to the consultant or their agency or someone who they're working with. Now, again, you're going to hear me say this a number of times. Before you sign anything, I always want you to take that time, review it yourself, have someone who you trust review it. If you are someone who is not a native English speaker, I want to make sure that you either provided that document in your native language, or you take it home and you review it with someone who's able to translate it for you. So give yourself that time, no matter what kind of urgency the person across the desk is imposing upon you. You always have that time to review the contract. But I want you to be especially cautious of these quitclaim deeds. You should know that this is an atypical approach to foreclosure prevention. It is not going to rid you of the liability of your mortgage. And absent some very, very specific circumstances, it's not something that most homeowners are going to benefit from. So if anyone asks you to sign or consider a quitclaim deed, you should immediately be thinking about who you can contact to discuss that option with, and you shouldn't sign that contract until you've had an opportunity to review it with an attorney. So I think on the next slide. Okay. So another thing that we get some complaints about here at my office are loan modification companies. Again, as you're receiving all of those offers in the mail, you're probably going to see some folks who are reaching out to offer to help you modify your loan. And this is something we've seen in years past, a little bit less recently, but I think looking forward, we might see as this federal forbearance period is ending, that we might see this happening a little bit more. So I want you to have this in the back of your mind. If someone is offering to help modify your loan, I think Ron mentioned earlier, your first step whenever you're struggling to pay your mortgage should always be to contact your mortgage servicer. Alert them to any distress that you might be in and ask them if they have an internal loan modification team that might be able to help you. This is a way that you're guaranteed that you are working with the correct entity, right? Again, Ron mentioned you don't ever want to use the contact information that comes on a mailer. So if you get a mailer, even if it looks like it comes from your loan servicer, you want to get onto Google, get onto your platform where you contact your mortgage servicer and contact them through one of those phone numbers. But if you want to engage with one of these loan modification companies, one of these outside loan modification companies, here's some of the things that I want you to think about before you engage with any of them. Again, you're going to see in that second bullet point, my theme of the night is if anybody wants you to pay up front, you should immediately be suspicious of that person, right? It is illegal for loan modification companies to ask for upfront fees. So if someone is asking you to pay a fee, even a small one, before you sign a contract or before they start working with you, that's someone who you want to be immediately suspicious of. That should be raising your red flags. Again, you're going to want to contact Ron at his Office of Financial Empowerment or find a trusted friend or attorney. If you want to go to the next slide. So before we go on to this, I want to talk to you about a couple of other things that we've seen in our office. Just some ideas that I want to raise with you folks. So one other kind of fraud that we've been seeing is what I'm calling investor to investor sales. And this occurs when a consumer is sometimes contacted by a person or an agency that looks like, or even sometimes is, a real estate company. So if you are potentially struggling to pay your mortgage, you might be thinking to yourself that now is a good time to sell and find something smaller or something that's more in your budget. It's an understandable choice. If you are receiving solicitations from a company that purports to be a real estate company, I again want you to take a little bit of time and be cautious about who you engage with. The hallmark of this investor to investor scam, this investor to investor concern that we're currently considering, is folks who appear to be real estate agents, or sometimes even licensed real estate agents, will reach out to consumers and offer to help them sell their home. But they are not actually contracting with you as a real estate agent. They're contracting with you as an investor, which means that they're not actually working on your behalf. They're working on their behalf. So many of you, if you purchased a home, you've worked with a real estate agent before. It's their job to work for you, right? And so in this case, if an investor contacts you, they're working for them. So one of the hallmarks that you want to see, that you want to be looking for whenever you're working with a real estate agent, but especially if you're someone who's been in your home for a long time, or who wasn't necessarily thinking about being on the home purchasing market anytime soon, is whenever you receive an offer, I want you to take a moment and compare the price that you are being given to the prices of comparable homes, or homes in your neighborhood if at all possible. So one of the hallmarks of these investor to investor sales is that the consumers are being given a very low price for their homes. Again, because that investor is acting on their own behalf and not on behalf of the consumer, not acting as a representative in your best interests. So the first and easiest thing to do, which probably most of you would already have thought about, is to compare that price to what other homes in your market are selling for in your neighborhood or in comparable neighborhoods. As we kind of noted a moment ago, and as you probably have noticed, the housing market in Denver and the surrounding areas is very hot right now. So even if you looked at the price of your home or comparable homes a couple of years ago, I want you to check again, because the likelihood that the market price for your home has increased is very high. So take a moment, just confirm that the price you're being offered is comparable to what other homes would be getting. So that's your first red flag. One of the things I want you to be cautious of is if you're engaging with any real estate agent, but if you're ever a little bit suspicious of the person you're engaging with, before you sign any contract, I want you to look on the last or next to last page of that contract. Should be some information, usually in a highlighted box, that indicates that your agent is working on your behalf. So for instance, if I am working with a person named John Doe, there should be a space on the end of my contract that indicates that I'm being represented by agent John Doe, and there's usually a checkbox there. Similarly, if I'm selling to someone, there's going to be the name of their agent as well. Sometimes it's the same person, but either way, you're going to have a disclosure that John Doe is working on behalf of me. If you don't see that, I want you to take a moment, don't sign that contract, and go back through the contract. Look for any kind of disclosure that A, this is not a typical real estate contract. It might explicitly state this is not a typical Colorado real estate contract. And B, any disclosure that the person you're working with, John Doe, is working as an investor. So that's going to be your keyword here, is if John Doe is working as an investor, he's working on behalf of himself and not on behalf of you. And I want you to be careful with that. One other thing that a little light bulb went off in my head, again, as Ron was talking, this is sort of the flip side. Ron mentioned this idea of HOA foreclosures. And this is something we sometimes see from consumers. I want you to all be aware that your HOA can foreclose on your home. And they can foreclose on your home sometimes for very small amounts. We have seen consumers who are getting foreclosure notices for sometimes, $3,000 and $5,000, which if you're receiving lots of mail, you might think to yourself, it seems improbable that someone is able to foreclose on my home for such a small amount. And so we see consumers frequently disregard those notices or think to themselves, this is a scam. And they pat themselves on the back and throw that notice right in the recycling bin. So I want to be here to alert you, and Ron has alerted you, that this is actually not a scam. Your HOA can foreclose on you even for a small amount. And so if you receive a notice from your HOA, I want you to pay attention to it. Again, I want you to go through all of those same steps. Don't call the number on the notice. Go find the number for your HOA board in your filing cabinet somewhere and contact them directly. But I don't want you to disregard that and to think that that one's a scam. I want you to pay attention to that one. So, all right, going back to the slides, a couple of sort of just broad ways in which we think about someone who might be a fraudster. Someone who's friendly and smart and charming and willing to help you. And I know that you say to yourself, wow, that Ron, he was incredibly charming. He was very friendly. He does seem like he wants to help me. I know this is a bit of a broad category, but I want you to be on alert for someone who seems like he or she is posturing more than providing information, right? The distinction here is that Ron is ready to provide you with information, right? He has the resources, he has the folks who are available to help you. If there's someone who looks like they're covering their tracks or not willing to answer your questions and they make up for it with a smile and a wink, I want you to be cautious with that person. So next slide. Other signs of fraud. Some of the things that you may or may not see, some things we've seen in consumer complaints before, are any inconsistencies, errors, or parts of your paperwork that don't make sense to you. If you're signing a contract and you ask for an explanation and the person who is asking you to sign cannot explain it, that should be a red flag for you. And I want you again to take that time to go back and review that contract with a trusted friend, family member, an attorney. Anyone who doesn't provide you copies of your contract, that should be someone who you're suspicious of. Here again, delays, any sense of urgency. There are lots of instances, even in normal real estate business contracts, where we will get a sense of urgency, right? There are delays that we don't understand. There's something here at the bank. There's this contract is being held up. It needs to be notarized. There are plenty of things that might raise a red flag. So I want you to treat these all as potentials, right? If you see that someone is unable to explain the contract and they want you to sign it quickly, or if they are thinking about a quitclaim deed and they also won't provide you a copy of the paperwork. So think of these as little clues. If you get more than one clue, I really want you to start reaching out to those resources that are available to you. Start reaching out to those firefighters. And I think we have one more slide. Okay. So this is the website that I want you to direct you to for resources from my office. And I apologize, these are not live links. That's a failure on my part. But the easy thing that I want you guys to do whenever you have any questions or want further information or resources from us is you go into Google and you just type Stop Fraud Colorado. It's really easy. It'll get you to the resources that are provided by the Colorado Attorney General's office. We have, as you can kind of see here in the URLs, we have a whole fraud center that covers topics not only about mortgage fraud and foreclosure fraud and rescue scams, but can also provide you with other valuable information about other types of fraud that you might see. So this is a really broad resource. If ever you feel like you are engaging with or doing business with someone who does not appear to be on the up and up or might appear to be lying to you, I want you to take your time, go to this website, and see what kind of resources we have available to you. One of the resources that, again, I want to direct you to is to file a complaint with our office. And I think this might be the next slide. Yeah. Anyway, if you go to Stop Fraud Colorado, one of the big buttons you're going to see is file a complaint. Again, if you are currently if you're currently experiencing fraud or you're concerned, you want someone to look over a contract with you, or you're experiencing financial hardship, I want you to call your first responders first, right? The Office of Financial Empowerment, the Colorado Legal Services, who you're going to hear from soon. Those are your firefighters. Those are the folks who, if you're going to call 911, those are the guys you want on the other line, right? They're going to help you in your particular situation. The second phone call you want to make is to my office. My office is going to take all this information down, and we're going to use that in order to build up an investigation. The importance here is it's a little bit of me asking you to do your civic duty, right? Ron and the folks on his team, the HUD certified counselors who he can connect you with, they're going to help you with your problem. But what I'm going to ask you to do is to help protect your neighbors, is to help protect other consumers. If you are have gone through these trainings and you know your stuff and you are smart enough to spot that scam artist before you sign the contract and before he's able to get you, I want you to pat yourself on the back. And then I want you to contact us, because your neighbor might not be as savvy as you are, right? They might be in a hurry. They might be a little bit more feeling more urgency than you are. They might have just missed the warning signs. And so by reporting those folks to our office, we can prevent them from hurting other people. So that's what I'm going to ask you to do with your second phone call. I think that's mostly what I have for you folks, but I'm happy to take questions.
And thank you, Ms. Harris. I think this has been very, very, very helpful for folks, and know that again, for folks, just to reiterate, you know, at some point, if you feel like you, or if you suspect that you're being scammed, or you have been scammed, immediately you should call this number, and definitely talk to an attorney, right? And I think this is something that is really, really critical for folks to understand. It's never too late either. I think making sure that you have the information, the resources at your fingertips, and they have the proper resources and information. So with that, I do, if you want to go to the, oh, those are all the phone numbers. These are the different general HUD approved, or the HUD approved housing and counseling organizations that are licensed and are trained to help you. Know that a lot of these are nonprofits, and this is an opportunity for you to also ask questions around housing, home ownership, rental assistance, all of that stuff. So with that, I just want to make sure that we do have time for questions. If you have a question, please put it in the chat. We will see it, and we will answer it. So one of the questions that came up was, and one of the things that we're going to do also is I want to introduce Craig Carmine. If you want to say hello, Mr. Carmine, and he's from Colorado Legal Services and can help answer some of these questions as well too. Do you want to talk a little bit about what Colorado Legal Services is?
Yes, I can do that. Colorado Legal Services provides civil legal assistance to folks who can't afford attorneys. We do have some limitations on who we can represent because of federal grants, but it never hurts to apply. It really doesn't. In fact, especially if it's a foreclosure action, you're losing your house, it does not hurt to apply, because if you don't qualify for our services, it's likely that we will refer you to somebody who does limited or low income or fee-based, low fee-based legal services. Like I'm here in El Paso County, and we have a at the Bar Association, they have a service in which they have reduced fee attorneys that will take on some certain types of cases. And I'm looking at the questions right here. HUD counselor, Mr. Tafoya is
asked about, so Mr. Tafoya asked if the HUD counselors that we shown on the slides, if they're free of charge. Most of the nonprofits are, and that's what they do. And but it just depends on who you call as well too. I mean, there's also some other resources that that you have fingertips on, but these are the ones that we if you're calling our office in the city or our offices in the city or some of the, or these nonprofits, these HUD counselors, they're typically almost, I would say 100% free of charge.
Yeah.
And then there's
don't-
another one that says, should I start with a HUD coach if in foreclosure? Mr.
I would say call an attorney first, because you don't, when you say you're in foreclosure, there's different stages of the foreclosure you might be in. It might be you are in, if it's a non-judicial foreclosure, you might be just at the Rule 120 hearing, which is a hearing that they have to have in court. So you'll have to have an attorney at that point, most likely. But I would start with the attorney, because then the attorney could then say, no, it's really early in the process. Here, you give you some advice and send you to a HUD counselor. I would start with the attorney.
And if you do get a notice that says foreclosure, or if your property's in foreclosure or anything like that, you could always call us. I am the public trustee for the city and county of Denver. We oversee the foreclosure processes. You can also call us. Just call us at 311 if you're in Denver, and they'll direct you to us too, just to validate any information or to talk about steps in the foreclosure process. Mr. Ojeda, it looks like you were about to say something as well.
Yes, actually, I just emailed the link over to Celia, who's running the screen for a resource page. It is on the host website. It contains resource guides for both foreclosures and evictions on resources that are available in 13 languages. So I'm going to see if she can post that and make that available for everybody. And it gives a great description, narrative on each of those two instances, timeline, what the timeline looks like when you're going through the processes, and then, of course, a list of resources that you can reach out to.
Yeah, and it looks like Celia is putting it on the
And I think people will find that very, very useful. I know we didn't talk about evictions at all, but it's a huge problem coming up. We do have one change in the eviction resource guide going to make, because our TRUA or rental assistance program has run out of funds, and assistance for rental is now being done by the state. And there is a reference number for that. It's called the ERAP program, or Emergency Rental Assistance Program. So I don't want to diverge too much though. But yeah, I think that people will find this very, very interesting and very useful.
Right.
I also agree, call an attorney. Call your attorney first. They will also tell you the best way to move forward on this, what the next steps are. It's never a one-step approach. There's usually 2 or 3 things you need to be doing at the same time in order to protect yourself.
I have a question. I have a question for Ms. Harris from the Attorney General's office. Ms. Harris, what are the typical cases of fraud that you see that are just like, man, if folks just called our number, we can avoid this altogether? I mean, especially during the pandemic, what are the kind of trends that you're seeing now in terms of the caseload?
Yeah, with regards to mortgages and foreclosure, especially, some of the things that we've been seeing lately, and I think that we'll see more of, are those folks who are reaching out to offer to help with loan modifications. I think a lot of folks are in a position right now where they have lost their income, or their income has stagnated. Potentially, one family member has lost their income, and so they're in a place where they want to remain in their home, but they just can't do it. And so one of the key flags that again, I'm a broken record, is we see folks who've paid up front, right? Who've paid thousands of dollars to someone who promised to help work with their loan servicer. And then, maybe they have a couple of meetings, maybe they've submitted some paperwork, but eventually that company goes off the grid or stops responding. And the unfortunate answer there is that it's challenging, and perhaps Craig can speak more of this, to recover those funds. It's certainly in our office, it's one of those things where I think to myself, goodness, I wish that you had contacted us before you talked to these folks, or I wish you'd looked at our resources and thought, and just seen that as a red flag right from the get-go. I would have saved folks a lot of heartbreak and a lot of financial strain, which clearly folks who are already facing an inability to pay their mortgage can't necessarily afford to lose a couple $1,000s to a scam artist. So that's one thing that we've seen a lot of.
Are these pieces of mail that are being solicited to them, or are they text messages or phone calls, or what do you see in there is the hook, line, and sinker?
We haven't got anybody as savvy as text messages yet, but I anticipate that, it is 2021. We'll probably see that coming forward. Mostly what we see are solicitations through the mail. It's an easy and cheap way for folks to reach out to a large number of consumers all at once. And the honest answer is that if folks who are in financial distress, who are facing these types of imminent foreclosure proceedings, or who are even in forbearance now, are probably receiving a lot of mail. I don't want you to think that every single postcard you get is from a scam artist. It's certainly not. But I would like it if you thought to yourself, every single piece of mail could be from a scam artist. And so I want you to take the steps that we've discussed in this hour to protect yourself and to always be on alert.
You know, I get the text messages that say, "Hey, Paul, it's Sophia. I want to let you know that, you know, I'm curious if you want to sell your house at Sutton address, right?" Or it's amazing the kind of communication that ends up happening or ends up coming unsolicited to people's phone numbers and addresses and things like that. And sometimes they're handwritten. And it looks like a personal postcard. So be mindful.
Difficult.
Yeah.
And it is especially challenging, I think. You mentioned a real estate agent, someone who's looking at to see if you can sell your home. That was a little bit more difficult because, of course, many real estate agents do get their business that way. They get it through postcards or through personal solicitations. And so that one is I just want folks to be careful before they're signing that contract, right? Is you want to be sure that it's very clear in your contract that this is someone who's representing you. And if you choose to engage in an investor sale, just be careful and find someone who is going to be your representative in that contract. So know when someone is working for you and know when they're working for themselves.
There's always an oldie but goodie scam that's always been around, and it's still around, is the home improvement loan, where they come out, they'll say, yep, it's usually targeted towards older individuals, where they'll come out and, you know, say they're going to do, you know, X, Y, and Z work to your house, put a loan, you know, you take out a loan for this. They don't do anything, but you got to pay the loan. So you got to be very, very careful with those. I see those a lot, especially with older folks.
Yeah. There's a question that came in, Mr. Carmine, in regards to, is there a resource to check if a company is legitimate or is authorized to do business in Colorado?
I always go to the Colorado Secretary of State to make sure that any LLC, any type of corporation, you can check to see if they are incorporated in the state of Colorado.
Yeah.
And
Mr.
fact,
Yeah, I was going to add, you can also call, sorry, please, excuse me.
I was just going to say, you can go to the Colorado Secretary of State's website and get that information very easily.
Yeah. Mr. Ojeda, looked like you had something to add to that as well, too.
Yes, in addition to that, you can also contact DORA. That is the Department of Regulatory Agencies at the state. DORA, they do have a division for real estate. You can see if they're supposed to be licensed in the state, whether their license is real, if it's active. And that's true for many different businesses, including insurance agencies, for example, and other businesses related to housing. But that is also an excellent agency to check.
And if you're like you get a letter that says it's from an attorney, you can always check out that attorney too. You can straight up just look up on just attorney search on the Colorado bar, the Supreme Court. Everybody's listed there who's a licensed attorney in the state of Colorado, and I'm sure there are plenty of folks out there that want to claim that they're an attorney.
I don't have.
We have contacts through our office. We do have contacts with multiple agencies, licensing and enforcement agencies, both the city and the state, be it the AG's office, CDLE, DORA, DPD, DA's office, the auditor's office as well in regard to wage theft and that. So if at first you don't succeed, you can call our office and we will refer you to the correct agency.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Ojeda. I don't see any other questions. If folks have any questions, please put them in the chat. Is there anything that we didn't cover that maybe you wanted to add, or something just to reiterate? Ms. Harris, I'll start with you, and then we'll go to Ron or Mr. Ojeda. I'm sorry, Mr. Carmen.
I don't think I have any other substantive information to add, but just to thank consumers for educating themselves. Pat yourselves on the back for becoming more informed and being ready to protect yourself. And again, if you are smart and savvy and you spot that scam artist before they get you, please call our office and let us protect others.
And also, just to add, it doesn't have to be about housing. It can be about other things as well too. They can enter, you may get some letters about housing, but you also may get odd letters about business proposals or about, daycare or senior care, or things like that. I mean, there's a lot of weird stuff that's out there, and if it just seems a little fishy or weird and doesn't pass that smell test, verify it. Okay.
That is absolutely true.
Yeah. Notaries. There's also a lot of notary fraud out there. So just make sure if it requires you calling back, or if it sounds too good to be true, or they're sending you what looks like a check in the mail and you're not expecting that, it may not be real. So for sure, put your suspicious antenna on. Mr. Ojeda.
Yeah, I'd like to say in closing that to let our residents know that there are tens of millions of dollars coming to the state and through the state to the city in regard to resources that can help them, legal resources, help in evictions and other different areas in housing. I don't want people who are in trouble to feel as though they are alone, because they are not.
Right.
They call our agencies, they can get help. We understand that a lot of times it's people in at-risk populations, such as immigrants and refugees, people in lower incomes, or neighborhoods of color, disabled veterans, and the like, that get targeted for this predatory behavior. You are not alone, right? So that's my biggest message to them. There is help out there.
Mr. Carmi, I think that's a good little segue into anything that you want to add.
Yeah, so if you're having a problem with housing, family law, consumer matters, call Colorado Legal Services. If we can't represent you, we'll try to give you at least some advice, okay? Don't be afraid to give us a call. I mean, we have offices across the state. I'm here in El Paso County. We have offices in little places like La Junta and all the way across the state in Durango and Grand Junction. So don't hesitate to call us. Also, I want to just reiterate, if you get something from your HOA, do not disregard it. I deal with a lot of HOA foreclosures, and a lot of times the attorney's fees on for the HOA are much more than, say, a one missed payment. That is where it gets into some really difficult times, and they are not shy about foreclosing on people's houses. So if you get something like that, call Colorado Legal Services. Honestly, call them immediately, because there's a lot of stuff that goes on with HOAs that, that really kind of mess with consumers.
All right. Well, we really, really, really appreciate your time, and thank you, panelists, for your expertise, for your presence. Again, the Office of Financial Empowerment and Protection, that's part of the city. The Attorney General, the Colorado Attorney General's office, Colorado Legal Services, and then the list of just organizations that are out there that are HUD approved, counseling organizations that will help you as well too. And then You could always give us a call here at the clerk and recorder's office / the public trustee when it comes to foreclosure matters and things like that at 311 from your phone, or just hit us up, denverclerkandrecorder.org. With that, it's 7 o'clock. I smell dinner somewhere. Maybe that's because my window's open and somebody's I saw that, and it's literally driving me nuts just smelling it and not being able to bite that. So I'm sure everybody else is in the same boat. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Don't forget to share this if you can to other folks that may benefit from this. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.